Ooh, boy. Welcome back to that lean, mean, wrestle talking machine that is Wrestling with Egos. It's your boy, Brian, joined this week by the always popular AEW assassin, RJ, for another installment of the two-man power trip. With us in spirit is Patrick, who pleaded with us. He pleaded with us to allow him to catch up on his Z's, and us being the nice, upstanding, wrestle talking gentlemen that we are, we obliged. RJ, how are you this evening, good sir?
I am phenomenal. How are you, sir?
I'm doing well. There's a lot to talk about. There's a lot to digest. We're going to dive right into it as best we can. I'm going to start off by cracking a little joke at AEW's expense. It wouldn't be a week in wrestling if AEW didn't file a trademark on something. And I got wind this week that AEW filed for a trademark of the phrase "the forbidden door."
Yep.
And I don't think, we were talking a little bit in the pre-show run-up. I don't think that we've gotten to hear, because there's been so many other things to talk about with the Rumble and with just the sheer shock of the fact that it appears that there's a partnership, a working relationship, whatever you want to call it. I don't feel like we've gotten to hear your completely unvarnished opinion of what direction, you being the resident expert on these companies, what direction you want to see us all going. So the floor is yours. Feel free to take it in any direction you want.
Well, on a personal level, I see one thing that I want to make clear before I really get into this is that as much as I love AEW, that's a personal thing. That's not really it's about wrestling, obviously, but that's more of a me following the Young Bucks and Kenny for as long as I have, and then you throw in Cody and Hangman throughout the years, and as much as I've followed the Elite guys for years, I always BTE was always my favorite thing to watch, and I always craved a wrestling show that was BTE, and AEW kind of brought that to life. That's AEW made that a reality. And it took a long time, but I finally got my day in the sun of months in the sun now of Kenny being AEW World Champion and the Young Bucks being the tag team champions at the same time. But when you ask me what company on planet Earth is the best professional wrestling company, I am not going to say All Elite Wrestling. I will say New Japan Pro Wrestling every single time you ask me that question. As much as I love and adore AEW, to an extent, I enjoy watching New Japan more. Just the style of wrestling, the style that they do things, how it's not a week to week television show kind of deal, how they do the road to shows and then the big show and then they're off for a little while. I just love the format of New Japan Pro Wrestling. I think it's awesome. It gives you time to dive into the wrestling and then pull back from it a little bit. On a personal level, the number one thing for me is that I might get Kenny back in New Japan. And that's a personal take on it. As much as I love AEW, Kenny leaving New Japan crushed me, ripped my soul out. And obviously once AEW became a thing, Kenny leaving New Japan to AEW was inevitable and what I wanted. But it still hurt because he's had so many unbelievable matches in New Japan, and there were still some unbelievable matches on the table that he didn't have. Jay White being one. He had a match with Jay White, but Jay White for the United States Championship. But Jay White was
still finding his way.
Very young. Online anymore, but he had just come back from Excursion and faced Tanahashi at Wrestle Kingdom, and he had a couple other matches under his belt, and then bang, he was facing Kenny. I'd like to see today's Jay White face Kenny Omega. This puts my all-time dream match back on the table. I have always, and I know you're going to be confused for a second. I have always, my all-time dream match has always been, well, not always, but for years and years, has been Kenny Omega versus Shinsuke Nakamura. That's what I wanted. You will never, ever convince me that Shinsuke Nakamura finishes his career in WWE. That's not going to happen. Guys who are legends in New Japan wrestle into their 60s. Okay, like not on a high level, but they are always there. Like everybody that's anybody that can still wrestle physically does it. So there will come a time where Vince and Hunter are done with Shinsuke and don't think he has any value anymore. And he's going to go back to Japan. And a partnership between AEW and New Japan is the only way that I would ever get him versus Kenny. On a bigger, less personal level, I mean, this puts so many things on the table. We're talking AEW title defenses at Wrestle Kingdom. We're talking IWGP title defenses at AEW shows. We're talking, again, the way that New Japan lays out their schedule, how they have some time off. That lends itself to AEW borrowing guys on a regular basis. I would love to see Guerrillas of Destiny in AEW. As much as AEW's tag team division has a lot of teams, it's very top heavy.
Right.
So if you can some of those top teams and give them somebody else to work with other than rotating through each other all the time, then, because I mean, like we're back, we've circled the rotation and we're back at Young Bucks versus Santana and Ortiz now. Like,
yeah,
they had to shake things up and give Jericho a new partner, and like they keep having to shake things up in the tag team division a little bit to keep things fresh because it's so top heavy. There are tons of teams. Roppongi 3K, Show and Yo would tear the house down at AEW shows. There are so many guys in New Japan who can now, in that time off, post-COVID, obviously,
of course,
come to America on a regular basis and much more. And I feel like this is going to be bigger than New Japan's partnership that they had for several years with Ring of Honor. That's where we get the War of the World shows and the Global War shows and the Supercard shows with Ring of Honor teaming with New Japan to do things like that. But let's be honest, as much as Ring of Honor was the number 2 or 3, depending on the year, wrestling company in America, they never really had a steady weekly television show. They always had a weekly television show, but it wasn't on a network like TNT. It was always on either the internet, a streaming service, or a channel that a lot of people don't get. Like, so now you have a partnership with New Japan and AEW, who has a show on TNT. Like, and a lot of people, I'm seeing a lot of chatter online of this is great, but you're not going to get the big names in AEW. You're not going to get Okada coming to AEW. You're not going to get Naito coming to AEW. You're not going to get Kota Ibushi coming to AEW. And to those people, I say, why the hell not?
and I think that's what I'm choosing to look at it as. As naive as we can all agree that I am about all of this, and as Connecticut centric as I've been, and I'm trying to be better, I really am. It's exposure. It's because for people like me, it's been an awakening, an epiphany over the last several years that there's so much more good wrestling out there, great wrestling out there, drool-worthy wrestling out there that I don't even know exists until a little birdie lent me his New Japan credentials. And every so often I log in and it doesn't really matter who the match is. It could be Tetsuya Naito and the janitor that mops the floors in the back. And it's a great match. And it goes back a little bit to what I said last week. I don't think you're going to get everything in one fell swoop. It's going to be, okay, you liked this, wait till you see what we have coming in 2 months. Now we got this guy. And then eventually you work your way up to Naito and Tanahashi and Omega or Okada rather, and Jay White and all of these people that people in the know, watch the G1 Climax matches and the Wrestle Kingdom matches and lose their minds over.
Right.
It's AEW's booking style, quite frankly. Why are you going to give away that on a Dynamite?
For sure.
As things start ramping back up again, you're allowed to travel around the country again. You're allowed to have more than 15% capacity at an arena.
Right.
That's when you're going to start seeing these blockbuster matches.
There's exposure is the key word in all of this that you said that I didn't say. That is the key word in all of this. There was a couple of years ago, Kazuchika Okada was #1 on the PWI 500. And it was a travesty to me at the time how many people on Twitter were like, who the hell is Kazuchika Okada? Like, why is he #1? No, this isn't right. Seth Rollins should be #1, or whoever it was.
Yeah.
But we are finally going to have an opportunity where people are going to get exposure to these guys that folks like me, the thousands of us that exist in America, have been pounding the table. No, Seth Rollins isn't the best wrestler in the world. It's Okada. And no, like Roman Reigns isn't the best heel. It's Jay White. And no, the biggest baby face isn't it's Tanahashi. Like all of us that have been pounding the table for all of these names are finally going to be put in front of your face on a major national level. And
it's that old adage, you can't see the forest for the trees.
Right. One thing that's kind of flying under the radar here is that today is February 12th. Yesterday, February 11th, was the first day of an agreement between New Japan Pro Wrestling and the Roku channel. I don't know anybody that has a Roku. That's on Roku. It's an app that you download. It's a special channel. It's an app called the Roku channel. You can now go on the Roku channel and search New Japan Pro Wrestling. And right now, because it started yesterday, all you're going to find are all the matches from last year's Wrestle Kingdom, Wrestle Kingdom 14, Wrestle Kingdom 2020. But they're all there. The whole Wrestle Kingdom is there. And as the partnership gets more and more, you're going to see more and more of the content that's on New Japan World get put on the Roku channel. That's going to, again, give more exposure. Again, New Japan working with an American company like AEW opens the door to them working with American streaming services like Roku, like the Roku channel.
Speaking and there are far worse places to start than Wrestle Kingdom 2020.
Right, absolutely. Speaking of New Japan World, I went on New Japan World today and got a majorly awesome surprise. The most recent thing that has been uploaded to New Japan World is Kenta's match from Dynamite. And it isn't listed under extras. It isn't listed under anything. There is a category on NJPW World now. The category is AEW Dynamite. That is the name of the category on New Japan streaming service. So anybody out there that is saying that this Kenta coming in is being overblown and that this isn't going to be a working relationship like all of us want it to be, like my wet dream of a freaking working relationship, that is 100% what it is going to be. Anybody that is saying that this is going to be on a minor level has been proven wrong at this point. There is a entire category dedicated to AEW Dynamite on New Japan World. And while that category only has one video now,
Stay tuned.
they would not have created an entire category for it if it was going to stay one video.
Who follow-up question for you then on that, because I mean there's literally so many directions we could go in now with this. Take me behind the structure then of the powers that be. Like who are the ones that are making the decisions about, who gets to come over and in what order and, how often and all that sort of thing. And take COVID out of it. We'll just pretend that we're in a vacuum, obviously.
Well, obviously on the AEW side, it's going to be the EVPs and Tony Khan. On the I would imagine on the New Japan side, they have a new president whose name I can never remember because it's not Harold Mage, the guy that I hated. I can never remember.
I keep hearing Gato's name. Is he still involved with?
Gato's been the New Japan booker for years and years.
Okay.
And he's one of the guys whose name I'm about to bring up. I would imagine it's the president, who I can't remember his name, I would imagine doesn't have a whole lot to do with it. The guys that are really in charge of bringing talent into and out of New Japan are Gato, who a lot of people know as Okada's manager for years and years, and then now he's Jay White's manager. He is the booker of New Japan. And then Tiger Hattori, who used to be a referee, just recently retired from being a referee in New Japan, is the highest level of bringing talent in and out. He is what Jim Ross was for Vince McMahon back in the 90s.
Okay.
So I obviously don't work for them. I don't know for sure. But through the years, the guy that has been responsible for talent in and talent out is Tiger Hattori.
I don't know. You could have fooled me that you don't work for them. I'm just saying, it's, all this inside information you're giving me.
Tiger Hattori has always had a absolutely phenomenal working relationship with specifically Kenny Omega and Matt Nick Jackson. So I would imagine Tiger Hattori is probably going to be the one that's responsible for in and out. Now, when it comes to one specific name, and I did mention him earlier, I would imagine that it will be a while before we would see him in New Japan. I'm speaking specifically of Kazuchika Okada. When a young lion is ready to graduate his young lion status, they do what's called an excursion. They go to a different company in a different country and learn a different way of wrestling than what they learned at the New Japan dojo, so that they're exposed to more, they can be better. Okada's excursion happened in America for Total Nonstop Action Wrestling, TNA. And they absolutely butchered everything about him. They completely turned him into a jobber. New Japan was furious by the time that Okada got back to Japan and how he was treated in TNA. And they are now very selective as to where they let Okada go.
Which I can totally understand.
Exactly. Absolutely. I think that something that's telling in that specific situation is them allowing Okada to work all in before AEW was announced. They allowed Okada to work all in, the show that was put together by Cody, Kenny, and the Young Bucks. That leads me to believe that Tiger Hattori and Gato trust Kenny, Cody, and the Young Bucks with Okada. But with that said, I still think that it will be a while before we see him in AEW because of the way that he was treated in America the last time.
because that's probably the guy everybody's waiting for. Okay, well, it's only a matter of time before Okada, but I mean, if you're both New Japan's higher ups and AEW's higher ups, why would you give us that right now?
Absolutely.
There's so many, there's millions of reasons to wait to the end of 2021 or the beginning of 2022 or even the end of 2022.
Right.
You know, just make us want it even more.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it was a little bit of a dream for me on Wednesday night watching my boy
Oh, I
Kenny Omega
bet.
team with an actual current member of the Bullet Club.
And that was a great match, and it wound up being a lot more physical and you know, hard hitting than I thought it would be. I thought it would just be your standard, you know, but it got out of hand
Oh yeah, absolutely.
pretty quickly.
More than I thought it would be for sure.
And that's actually a nice segue because something else happened on Wednesday night that I think is fairly significant. You actually had Sammy Guevara make the decision to finally rid himself of the inner circle. Your thoughts on how it went down, your thoughts on where they go from here with this storyline.
I thought it was very well done. First off, as far as where they go from here, the only thing that I'm going to say is that I'm going to be very disappointed if next week comes and Jericho doesn't have something to say to MJF about what happened on Dynamite. Because the way that MJF presented it to Jericho on Dynamite was that Sammy basically hit him for no reason and broke his phone for no reason, and I'm the victim. And he clearly wasn't. To anybody that watched the segment, MJF clearly was not the victim in that situation. He was trying to push Sammy's buttons and make what happened happen. That whole scenario between MJF and Sammy started on this specific episode. That specific segment started with Sammy telling MJF, I watched the show from last week and blah, 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 blah. So they've already put in that these guys watched the show from the previous week and see what happened. It's not like WWE storylines, and not to throw WWE under the bus. There was a long time where they were the only wrestling company that mattered. So they're the only ones that I can really say longevity-wise. They've done it a lot of times where something happens on the show, and then the person who's being lied to doesn't ever find out that they're being lied to, or it takes 3 months for them to find out that they're being lied to, when everybody that watches the show saw it plain as day happen on the TV. And if you watched the show, you would see that you're being lied to, but you don't know for 3 months because for some reason you don't watch the show. That's absolutely asinine. If next week comes and Jericho doesn't know what MJF did to Sammy, I'm going to be very, very upset. That is insulting my intelligence.
Pretty much.
And that is one of the things that AEW has promised to not do. We're not going to insult your intelligence. We're going to finish storylines. Wins and losses are going to matter. Like, it was one of the things they always said was, we're not going to insult your intelligence. And if next week comes and Jericho still doesn't know that MJF was the instigator of that situation, I'm going to lose all interest in the whole thing.
So that leads me into my next question. What, you know, I have down here, what mistakes should they avoid as this story unfolds? I would imagine that's one of them.
Absolutely.
You know, to ask us to suspend their disbelief and all of that. What other mistakes do you think they should avoid? Like, if you're in charge of this storyline, what are you having Sammy do specifically at, you know, in, say, in the next month, in the next 6 months? You know, what is this looking like as things unfold?
Well, I think he'll be gone for a while. The way that Sammy packed his bags, threw on his coat, and immediately left the building and said, I can't be involved with this right now. I need time away from this. That looked to me like he's going to be gone for a while. Or at least until a while could be a month, a while could be, however, a month is probably my limit on a while. That's probably the earliest that I would want to see him back, when he does something like, I can't handle this. I need to be away from all of this. I'm leaving. Goodbye. You have to be gone for at least a month after you do something like that. I think that lends right into Sammy Guevara being the reason Jericho and MJF lose to the Young Bucks when they finally get their tag title match at Revolution. I think Sammy comes back, and in my head, I have him attempting to screw MJF, but actually screwing Jericho. Like, either way, I know he's screwing the team as a whole, but there's
But now he's got two people angry at him.
Right. There's different ways that you can do it. He can target MJF and have MJF be the one that takes the loss, or you could target Jericho and have him be the one that takes the loss, or just play a distraction and to both of them, or there's a bunch of different ways that you could play it. I think the way that it will happen, Sammy will show up, attempt to have MJF take the loss, and in some way that will fall to Jericho taking the loss. And then all bets are off after that. We're going to be looking at a Sammy Guevara, Chris Jericho storyline.
In your opinion, has Sammy done enough to atone for the inappropriate comments that came out about, I don't know why this just flashed into my head. Do you think he's done enough, or do you think that AEW has had him do enough to atone for that, where they can move forward with a major storyline like this?
I think that when he apologized to Sasha and Sasha accepted his apology, that was enough.
Okay.
I do like that he went to counseling after that and was off TV for a little while. Granted, it wasn't as long as a lot of people would have liked. I thought it was long enough personally. Because there was a reason he was off TV. He was off TV so he could do the counseling. Like, that's the reason that he was off. So however long that takes, that's how long he's off TV.
Right.
Once Sasha didn't necessarily say it's all good, and you know what I mean? Like, she didn't, but she accepted his apology. And I think once she accepted his apology, I think he's fine after that. I'm sure I'm probably in the minority, but
and I'm not saying I've heard people say, "Oh my God, why are we still, catering to this guy," or anything like that. But I'm just kind of anticipating an argument for you, because this is obviously going to be a major storyline, kind of underneath what Kenny and everybody is doing. Right. He doesn't deserve it, and I personally think I agree with you. Once he appealed to Sasha directly, and Sasha said it's not forgotten, but it's, we're square, that sort of thing. And then he did what was asked of him. He took the time away, and he's, in my opinion, he's turned into one of the more rootable characters on the show, because you can just see how much he doesn't agree with what MJF and Wardlow, to a lesser extent, are trying to do to the Inner Circle. Now, one more question about the Inner Circle. Is the end game of this eventually to have all that faction split up? Like, maybe in a year, is there no more Inner Circle?
I hope not. I hope that that's not what happens. I hope that that's not the end game here. I think the Inner Circle is really good for AEW. And I think it's really good for a guy like Sammy specifically, and Santana and Ortiz too. To a lesser extent, Jake Hager. I think Hager could have come in and they could have found a way for him to be a major star within the company and used on a regular basis without the inner circle. I don't know that that's true with Santana or Ortiz or Sammy Guevara. There's a lot of guys, and again, as much as I love AEW, it has its faults. There are a lot of guys in AEW who are very talented wrestlers, but that's all they are on AEW Dark or Dynamite is very talented wrestlers. Without the inner circle, Sammy Guevara falls in that hole for sure.
You're saying people that are in search of a storyline, basically, in search of giving us a reason to care about them beyond what they do in the ring.
For sure. Like Peter Avalon is a fantastic example. Peter Avalon is a great wrestler. He's very underrated in my opinion. And he has nothing. He was the librarian for a while. That didn't catch on at all, really. It was more just a BTE thing, and they did it on Dark and Dynamite a couple times, but it was more just a BTE thing. And now he's pretty Peter Avalon, and he's doing this whole Rick Rude deal with the robe and taking the robe off, and that's fine. And I hope that catches on a little bit. But in the past, for the time that he's been in AEW, he's been, to steal a phrase from the Cody Shawn Spears storyline, he's been a good hand. Shawn Spears is another example of a guy who has been a very good wrestler and not a whole lot other than that. They've tried to do things with him, none of which have really been that successful. Once Tully started with FTR, Tully and Shawn Spears it was a matter of time until that came to an end. And he has had so many stops and starts in the company. There's tons of guys. I'm not saying, there's so many names that are flying through my head that I'm not saying. Scorpio Sky is maybe one of the best athletes in professional wrestling today, and he can't buy television time on Dynamite for some reason. Now they called him the king of AEW Dark, and that's fine. You do you. Like, you do what they're asking you to do, and you do it to the best of your ability. But Sammy Guevara absolutely would have fallen into Scorpio Sky, I'm the king of AEW Dark, and I have great matches hole without the inner circle. Jericho, without the championship, probably falls down to having rivalries because they're going to keep him on TV, but it's going to be rivalries that don't really matter much without the inner circle. Santana and Ortiz, now you see the way that AEW's tag team division has worked in a rotation through the year and a half or so that they've been on television. You're there and then you're not for a while, and like Evil Uno and Stu Grayson are near the top of the rankings, and then they lose, and then they drop down, and they're not seen for a while other guys like QT Marshall and Dustin Rhodes go up, and then they're gone, and then MJF and Jericho and Sammy Guevara go up, and then they lose, and then they're knocked down, and it's in a rotation. Like, everything, you're being used or you're not, and in the AEW tag team division. But that's not true for Santana and Ortiz. Santana and Ortiz are used all the time because of the inner circle. The inner circle has given the guys in the inner circle an ability to use their personalities that I don't think they would have had if the inner circle did not exist. One thing that New Japan does that a lot of people dislike because they're not used to it, in my opinion, is the reason that a lot of people dislike it, that I wish AEW would adopt. When it comes to New Japan, there are very, very few guys who are not in a group. There's Chaos, and there's Suzuki Gun, and there's Bullet Club, and there's, oh my God, I'm completely brain farting. LIJ, wow. Los Ingobernables de Japón. GBH is even still around a little bit. Everybody is, not everybody, but there's very, very select people who are not in a group. Like Tanahashi's not in a group, Kota Ibushi's not in a group. And the groups are always trying to get those guys. I think that AEW would be very, very well served to do that. And it might be we might be seeing something along those lines with Kenny bringing in the Good Brothers, and then this on again, off again partnership with the Young Bucks and them, and then Matt Hardy trying to create his stable with Private Party, and then who knows what that contract Hangman switched out says. You noticed that, right? A lot of people didn't notice that, apparently. I saw online.
I missed it. I mean, to be fair, I was watching bits and pieces of it, so I'll have to go back and watch it again.
Matt Hardy got Hangman drunk, and he was pretending to drink. You would see him throw the shot on the floor, and then and he was pretending to drink, but getting Hangman drunk so that he could sign Hangman to one of his 30% royalties contracts. He pulled out the contract out of the envelope and gave it to Hangman, and then while Hangman was signing the contract, or so Matt Hardy thought Hangman was signing the contract, Matt Hardy turned and got real close to the camera and started speaking into the camera and talking to the fans at home and telling them, I don't remember exactly what he said, but while he was doing that, behind him, Hangman Page picked up the contract that Matt Hardy had handed him, threw it, pulled one out of his jacket, put it on the table, signed it, and then Matt Hardy came over and signed it and slid it into the envelope and left. So who knows what that contract says that Hangman switched out. But you have Matt Hardy trying to create his stable, and you have Kenny kind of creating Don Callis, which don't get me started on Don Callis. As much as I love him behind the scenes and on commentary, Don Callis as a wrestling manager is absolutely terrible. Anyway, you have Kenny and Don Callis trying to do their thing with the Good Brothers and sometimes the Young Bucks, and you have the Dark Order, and you have the Inner Circle, and you have Matt Hardy trying to do his thing, and like they could be going to something like that. But I think that AEW would be very well served to put everybody in a group. Make 4 or 5 different groups, because you don't always have to have stable versus stable matches, but you can. It gives you the opportunity to do that if you need to. And it will give guys a chance to show their personality the way that the guys in the Inner Circle have been able to show their personality. So to answer your question, I absolutely do not at all think the Inner Circle should break up, and I hope they make more groups in AEW.
That's an interesting way of looking at it. I never thought that I would agree with you, but I do see the benefits to that. I am going to segue a little bit into NXT, so if you'll indulge me. I was watching the NXT show from this past Wednesday, and a killer promo for Vengeance Day, which is happening this Sunday evening. Killer promo between, like a highlight package highlighting Pete Dunne versus Finn Balor for the NXT Championship, which is going to absolutely be awesome. You heard it here first, folks. Hypothetically, let's say Edge proves me right and says that he wants to challenge for the NXT Championship at WrestleMania. Who would give him a better match? Do you think Pete Dunne would, or do you think Finn Balor would, and why?
Oh, I think Balor, and I don't think it's close. Pete Dunne is a very fantastic wrestler. Pete Dunne does what Pete Dunne does very, very, very well. It's like Jericho used to always say, I'm the best in the world at what I do. Pete Dunne does what he does phenomenally. I don't think that he is the level of wrestler that Finn Balor is. I think a guy like Finn Balor, you mentioned Naito having a match with the janitor in New Japan and how that would be phenomenal. Finn Balor could have a match with that janitor's mop, and it would be amazing. I don't know that Pete Dunne can do that. Another thing is that I think that Pete Dunne, as much as I love his hard-hitting style, I think it might be too much for Edge's neck.
That's kind of what I was thinking too, even though it's clear that Edge loves both guys, is a fan of both guys and their style and how they go. But I think you have to have that in the back of your head that, I want to go out and have a hard-hitting match with the guy, but he has that neck fusion surgery.
Right, exactly.
And he does need to, take bumps, but take them with care and precision. And we can't sort of be in the right spot. We have to be in the right spot. And plus, I also think too, if it's going to happen at WrestleMania, Balor's the money opponent for him.
Absolutely.
More the name recognition and all that. And I mean this in no way disrespectful towards Pete Dunne, because I know I would not want to have my hand broken in half by the dude. I don't care how much selling is involved in that. It looks like it hurts for weeks and weeks and weeks, and I do not want to be a part of that. But that being said, I do think this Sunday night, that match, if it's possible for a main event to steal the show, they're going to steal the show, because they're probably going to get, I say you give them a half an hour, and you let them go. And there's probably going to be a return match somewhere before WrestleMania where, Dunn gets turned into a made man by Finn Balor, much the same way Kyle O'Reilly was. But Balor retains the belt going into WrestleMania. That's kind of my thought process on the whole thing.
I have a question for you in regards to this event itself. Since I don't know one way or the other if they've said anything. Is there a reason that they took the name of two former WWE pay-per-views and put them together to make a terrible name for an NXT pay-per-view?
I don't know. I wonder if it's just because it's happening on Valentine's Day, and they thought, okay, this is cute. We'll call it Vengeance Day, and
So then bring back St. Valentine's Day Massacre.
I understand. If there's a backstory, I don't think, I know it or think that it would be worth sharing here, because I don't want to be made fun of for being a NXT homer by everybody on this show. So I'm just not going to entertain that question.
I've been calling
it itself.
Daytona.
What did you say?
I've been calling it Valentine's Daytona this year.
The card itself looks sneaky good. I will say that, because you've got the finals of both the men's and women's Dusty Cup. And this is going to sound weird, but you know who I'm taking a liking to that I never, ever thought in a million years I'd be taking a liking to?
Who?
The grizzled young veterans. They cut a great promo, and these guys have ring acumen to spare. I mean, they're a lot like Danny Burch and Oney Lorcan. They just ground and pound you into submission, and they can do some of the high flying stuff when the situation calls for it. I think they're going to win the Dusty Cup.
I haven't seen enough of them together to be able to put my 2 cents in here. But from the bits and pieces that I've seen, I've been impressed.
Yeah, I wonder if they're being positioned to kind of take over the mantle from the Undisputed Era, because I wonder if we're seeing the Undisputed Era kind of on its last fumes. The fact that Bobby Fish can't stay healthy, unfortunately.
Yeah.
The fact that they've been positioning Kyle O'Reilly as a singles competitor, still throwing it up every chance he gets, but being out there alone and not needing any backup as often as he has.
Right.
Just makes me wonder, like, if there's not a call up for Adam Cole in the near future or something. I mean, they are going to have to do that sooner or later, because actually all 4 of those guys realistically have done all they could ever be expected to do in NXT. They've been
Oh my God,
pulling the wagon for what, 3 years now?
something like that. Yeah, it's a lot longer than I ever thought it would last. Not
Yeah.
that I didn't think it was good. Like it's always been great, but a lot longer than I thought they would keep it together.
And I've just noticed that like the last like pretty much since the new year, it's just been losing a little steam. And it's that old adage, nothing lasts forever, you know. But you have a sneaky good card. You're gonna have Johnny versus Kushida, which I'm looking very much forward to. I would love to see those guys mix it up.
I miss
Yeah. And as I said, you got the finals of the Dusty Cup. I think Dakota Kai and Raquel Gonzalez are going to win the women's Dusty finals.
I
I
think
think
that
Ember and Shotzi are too new as a team.
I think that the pairing of them doesn't make any sense if they don't win.
That's true too.
They're not.
But if you're trying to put Raquel Gonzalez over the way you did at War Games,
Right.
because Raquel was the one that was over like Rover. I just don't see how another marquee event like this you don't put them over, and plus my cutie Dakota Kai gets to win the
Right.
Dusty Cup. I don't care what y'all say. I think she's gorgeous,
I know you do.
and it's it's I'll just be over here if anybody needs me. And then you've also got it's a triple threat for the women's championship with Io Shirai, Mercedes Martinez, and Toni Storm, which should be a banger of a match too.
Absolutely.
So I
Two of
figured.
dead gorgeous.
What did you say?
Two of those women are drop dead gorgeous.
You get no argument from me. And before we get into our entertainment for the evening, as if this whole show hasn't been entertaining already, the WWE Network has some sneaky good content on it the last couple of weeks. And all I will say is if you have not made time in your schedules, ladies and gentlemen, to watch the Untold episode about the Acolyte Protection Agency,
God, I love Untold.
you need to seek that out because you go into the backstories of both Bradshaw and Farouk, Ron Simmons, and then you get into the idea, the germ of the idea about how the APA was formed and what they were able to do consequently after it. And it's a pretty interesting because you don't get to see mid-carders as they were at the time highlighted that way.
Right.
We're used to seeing the Shawn Michaels specials and the Triple H specials and the 4 Horsewomen specials. And now here's a mid-card group, that gets some shine. And it's nice to see, despite the things that we know about Bradshaw now and, all the shenanigans he's been involved in. At the time, it's nice to see mid-carders get some run, especially in that mid-card at that point in time, which was one of the most stacked mid-cards I've ever seen, quite frankly. So if you haven't watched it yet, you need to make some time to watch it. So, are you ready, RJ?
Absolutely.
We are about to play a game of fill in the blank, where I will give you a statement, and we will both take turns filling in the blank and explaining why we filled in the blank the way we did. And I have several topics for your consumption. Based off of our first conversation of the evening, the Forbidden Door match, if you will, that I need right now is blank. And be careful how you answer this because there's a part 2. Key phrase in this sentence is right now. The Forbidden Door match that I need right now is blank.
For me, it's I got one in my head, but I'm trying to think if there's anything else. Probably Young Bucks and Gorillas of Destiny at this point right now. They're both being champions. Tama Tonga has publicly, and I would imagine privately, bemoaned this whole American Bullet Club that Kenny and the Good Brothers and the Young Bucks are trying to do, and he had some choice words for them in the days following the middle of the ring two sweep between the five of them. I would love to see a program and match with the Young Bucks and Gorillas of Destiny, which has happened before, but right now.
With the raw emotion and everything that would be involved, that would be pretty juicy. I would fill in the blank, and this might surprise you, and I don't know if this has ever happened before, but kind of going along with my theory from before that you don't want to give everything away right away, that you want to whet our appetites for what might be down the road and yet to come. The Forbidden Door match I need right now is Pac versus Zack Sabre Jr.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. I would imagine it's happened. I don't know that it has, but I would imagine it probably has.
I would think those two guys could just, at the drop of a hat, give us a nice snug 25-minute match and leave us going, whoa, what did we just watch? And you don't even need a title either. Just here you go, have a match. Here's 25 minutes, have a match.
Yeah, and that's the thing about specifically Zack Sabre Jr. Like, he doesn't need anything on the line. Like, his whole deal is, I want to hurt you and make you tap out because I'm superior to you, and that's all he needs. And right. I used to dislike it, but he's grown on me over the last year and a half. I've really became a big fan of him.
Mm-hmm. And the reason I asked you to strategically give your answer for that first question is the second question. The Forbidden Door match I can wait for is blank.
Kenny Omega versus Kota Ibushi for both championships.
Whoa. I tend to agree because that story has to be circled back to at some point.
Absolutely.
Even me with his little New Japan as I've watched, I know that you have to figure out a way to make that come full circle.
And I don't know that it's going to happen while they're both still champion, but God, I hope it does.
Yikes.
I hope that they both hold it long enough for that to happen.
For me, the one that I can wait for would be, and again, I don't know if this has happened ever either. I don't know how you would make it happen. But imagine Kazuchika Okada wrestling Hangman Page.
Yeah, it has happened. Not to the level that it would happen now, but
how long ago?
A couple of years.
Okay.
When only the select few people that really followed the Elite knew how good Hangman was.
Okay.
Or was gonna be, because I don't know that he was there.
I'll have to go find that one then, because this is what I've been doing. I've been looking at the permutations. I've just been kind of fantasy booking in my head about, okay, we'll put this guy with this guy, and we'll put this guy with this guy, and then we'll put these guys with these guys, and then we'll put, just because I don't know any other way of doing it. I don't have a storyline in the back of my head. I don't have a natural progression in the back of my head. I just think, would it be nice if Darby Allin wrestled,
right, of course,
Tanahashi or, whatever. I'm interested to hear your answer for this one.
2018 to answer your question. August 2018.
Okay, that kind of narrows it down for me to go find it later. Sammy Guevara will be AEW champion in blank months.
40?
See, I was thinking it would be sooner.
I think it's going to be a while for Sammy personally. I think now long run with the TNT title, I think that could be a thing.
Okay.
I
And
don't know.
the more I think about it, there's too much story in front of him. There's too many people in front of him that have a more realistic claim to lay to the championship.
Now, if you ask me how many months it's going to be before he gets a title match, that's probably a different answer. That might be a single digit number. But
You
to
know, a
be the
wonderful
champion,
match that we
I think a couple years
okay.
at least.
Because I mean, I kind of looked at what they're doing with him, and I'm like, gee, maybe they're gearing him up for like a stratospheric rise to the top. But the more I think about it now,
That would be
there's
cool.
unfortunately so many people in front of him that he would have to jump over.
I wouldn't mind being wrong on this at all. The kid deserves it, I think. But
Because I was going to say 8, but now
eight
based on
probably my number for a title match. 8 was
okay,
the number I had in my head for a title match.
the perfect person to eventually defeat Roman Reigns for the WWE Championship is.
Oh my goodness. I haven't given that any thought because I don't think he should ever lose it right now.
Nothing lasts forever, sir.
I mean, I don't want to say Brock Lesnar, but with Paul Heyman's involvement, probably Brock
I said the perfect person,
Lesnar. I
and
mean,
he's
I don't know. I don't know
as
that
I was typing this question, I'm like, Archie's going to say Brock Lesnar, but that's not the answer. I would say.
I don't know that there is a perfect person to beat him right now. I mean, there's a huge part of me that wants to say the Fiend, but I'm a Fiend mark, so that could 100% just be me being a Fiend mark. Um, I don't know that I have one right now.
Here's a sidebar question about the Fiend before I give you my answer. Do you think it should be about titles with the Fiend anymore?
No, I don't.
Because now this is not an original thought because I feel like we've talked about this before, and I feel like I've seen this on enough, stuff that I watch on YouTube and stuff like that. Like Bray and the Fiend have both had a run with a championship,
Yeah,
and with as much story as there is for him to mine with that character, and as much scores as he has to settle, a championship run is almost a limitation or a hindrance as opposed to an enhancement.
yeah. I think that's absolutely correct. I think that's spot on.
So my answer for the Roman Reigns question is going to be a little bit far fetched, and it allows for a long run that we all envision Roman having. But I think the perfect person to eventually unseat him is Adam Cole.
Yeah,
You call
that's
him up and you do all the things you usually do with an NXT, person. You reintroduce them to the fans of SmackDown or whatever it is. And maybe you just kind of put the germ in Roman's head that, oh, you think you're the new kid on the block and you're coming after me, you know, and it doesn't happen right away, but maybe next winter or the Rumble itself or something like that, maybe he wins the Rumble and calls this shot. I don't need to wait. Roman Reigns, let's go.
that'd be phenomenal.
You know,
God,
uh,
I really feel like you've hit the nail on the head right there. I think Adam Cole would probably be it.
because I'm looking because let's face it, there's a bunch of people that just aren't being used properly that it won't be. It won't be AJ Styles because he's already had multiple runs with the championship and he's also a heel right now. It's not going to be Cesaro because they don't know what they have in Cesaro. It's not going to be Nakamura because they don't know what they have in Nakamura. And if you're
With Shinsuke,
if your theory from before is correct, maybe when the contract's up, he says, "Okay, thanks, it's been fun." You know, I'm gonna take my leave now. And everybody else is too unproven, I think, to be taken seriously. Unless Seth Rollins comes back as a face, but even that, I don't know that you would buy into that.
Yeah, I thought his name, obviously with the Shield being such a big part of both of their histories, Seth's name did cross my mind when trying to think of somebody, but I don't know that I buy that.
And I don't know that I would want that either because I think we've told that story to death.
Absolutely.
They've had plenty of chances to write that story properly, and they drop the ball more often than not. And the final fill in the blank question for the evening. In your opinion, the best Elimination Chamber match ever was?
That's tough. I really like the one Bray one.
I'm embarrassed to say I don't remember much about it. I'll have to go back and watch that again.
Um,
Who was in it with him?
I don't remember everybody
Okay.
off my head. Another one that I actually enjoyed that a lot of people shit on constantly is the ECW Championship Elimination Chamber match with Lashley and the Big Show.
Really?
I enjoyed the hell out of that match.
You wouldn't have booked that any differently?
That's a different question. Maybe I would have booked it differently, but I did enjoy what they did. To be honest, I don't know that there's an Elimination Chamber match, and I'm sure this is recency bias in my head. There isn't an Elimination Chamber match that really stands out to me that I can remember.
See, for me, you never forget your first. The first one they had at Survivor Series 2002 that Sean won is always going to stick out in my head for a couple of reasons. First of all, I had never seen anything like it before. Because don't forget, I never grew up watching war games. I never grew up watching any of that kind of stuff. So just the sheer size of the structure and, the devastation of it, with, Rob Van Dam taking the risk that he did and, Triple H getting his throat busted. And, I think it was Jericho who actually got driven through the plexiglass by somebody. I forget who. And you had Eric Bischoff almost tripping on his way out of it after he announced, that was that part was great. In his hush puppy shoes, he almost did a face plant on his way down the stairs.
God, it would have been hysterical.
So for me, that would be my favorite or the best one.
That's a great answer.
You never forget the first one.
My favorite Elimination Chamber moment, isn't something that happened in the Elimination Chamber, actually. It was when Edge cashed in.
After New Year's Revolution in 2006 or whatever that was.
That's my favorite moment that happened, branching off of an Elimination Chamber match or in an Elimination Chamber match. That's my favorite thing that has ever happened because of an Elimination Chamber match. That one that Sean won was really good.
And then, of course, when Sean came up out of the grate to screw the Undertaker.
Yeah.
That was it. And Jericho's like, okay, I'll pin him. Fine. So, real quick, also a reminder about the standing homework assignment. We are not going to talk about it tonight since the Reverend of the Rant is not with us. We will wait until we are all three together again. If you have not had a chance to watch it for the first time ever in the history of Wrestling with Egos, it is a trilogy of matches involving Triple H and Batista, WrestleMania 21, Backlash, and then a Hell in a Cell match at Judgment Day. Get you some Batista and Triple H and be ready to talk about it next time. RJ, anything else you would like to throw in there before we sail on out of here?
No, I mean, I really wish that they would stop driving a wedge between Kenny and the Young Bucks on AEW television. But other than that, one thing I would like one thing that's really dumb and that I do want to mention. I'm sure a lot of people have seen. Wow, that was horrible English. I'm sure a lot of people have seen on AEW television this past week. They advertised the new All Elite Wrestling Micro Brawlers. I'm a big Micro Brawler guy. I collect them.
Nice.
Yes, that's a mini AEW championship.
I'd expect nothing less at this point.
Up above there in front of my IWGP championship is a Kota Ibushi Micro Brawler, and I have 20 or 30 or 40 on this shelf over here. I collect them.
Hashtag humble brag.
It's not. I collect action figures. Like I'm 35 years old. Anyway, they just came out with All Elite Wrestling Micro Brawlers that they advertised that are available for pre-sale until February 18th. I think it's noon Central Time. I think is when the pre-sale stops, something like that. But they're available
by right now.
They're available for pre-sale on shopaew.com or prowrestlingtees.com until February 18th. There are 7. Again, I say I collect them, so that would lead you to believe that I would need to buy all of those 7. I'm going to need all of the All Elite Wrestling Micro Brawlers. This is not the case. I bought 6. I went back and forth as to whether I was going to purchase the 7th one. Because I was fighting with myself. Do I need the whole set? Or do I need to be loyal to myself? And I chose loyalty to myself. And I only purchased 6 of them. Because the Britt Baker Micro Brawler is wearing black and yellow. And while for anybody else, that could just be black and yellow ring gear, we all know that for Britt Baker, her black and yellow gear is not for the Pittsburgh Penguins. It's not for the Pittsburgh Pirates. Britt Baker is a very, very huge Pittsburgh Steelers fan. If there's one thing in this world that I hate, it is the Pittsburgh Steelers. I went back and forth in my head. Do I need the whole collection or do I need to be a loyal Browns fan? And I chose loyal Browns fan and did not and will not purchase the Pittsburgh Steelers colored Britt Baker Micro Brawler.
Folks, if you would like to purchase the Britt Baker Micro Brawler, you can send it to RJ at rjeman.com or at rjeman with 2 N's. I'm sure he would love to get your donations.
I will make sure that anybody that sends me a Britt Baker Micro Brawler receives a video of me teeing it up and whacking it with my driver.
You're blocked. Blocked.
Yeah, and she does have me blocked on Twitter, but that's neither here nor there. That's
But
the Steelers is actually the reason that I'm blocked. So
yeah, that it's justified then at that point. We totally get it. As we do every week, we want to say thank you to all of our subscribers, all of our listeners. We know you're out there spreading the good word about Wrestling with Egos. We thank you for that. You can join the conversation. Email us at wrestlingwithegos@gmail.com. Holler at your boys on Twitter. Patrick is at rantmodeon. RJ is at RJEman with dos N's at the end. And your boy is at bkrigo15. Check out that podcast archive, bit.ly/with-egos. And hey, apparently we have a Facebook page. All of a sudden, Patrick messaged us a couple of weeks ago. Oh, we got a Facebook page, and I'm not really sure. Like I'm in charge of a lot on this show. I am not in charge of that. So like us on Facebook. Apparently the shows get dropped there too. So if you get our shows on Facebook, that's a quick and succinct way to get them, as opposed to waiting for one of the 3 of us to share them with you. But nothing works better, in my opinion, than spreading the word. Tell your friends about us. Say, hey, there's Three Crazy Cats on YouTube, and they got a wrestling show, and they'd appreciate your support, which we definitely do. Next week, it's probably going to be all three of us back in the saddle again. We will recap Vengeance Day, despite the crazy name. We will probably talk about the homework assignment, even though RJ can't stand Batista, which I didn't realize / remember until I was accosted last week.
I'm going to watch it. That Hell in a Cell match is good regardless.
Yes. And I'm sure that because AEW gonna AEW, that we're gonna have some other great things to talk about coming out of their neck of the woods next week as well. So for everybody associated with the show, for RJ, for Patrick, for myself, for our wives, our friends, our families, we say thank you very much, and this is why we love wrestling.